Hello, this is Scott Kloss. Welcome to the No Fear podcast. Today we have a very special guest, Craig Zuber. He is my real estate coach and life coach. And in the last 3 to 4 years since I've known him, there hasn't been another person that has been more influential in my growth and journey and where I'm going. And so we're going to go into his story through the U.S. Marines, through his real estate career, why he's a coach, and he started a experiential coaching program where he brings people along with him to do hard things like marathons and half Ironmans and the journey and all the life lessons that have come from that. So we are in for a real treat, and I hope you enjoy the show.
Thanks for having me. This is going to be exciting.
Good. So we'll get right into it. And your story, your background as a U.S. Marine, which is the top of the top. And I know there is so much that had to go into that, mentally, physically, emotionally. And I briefly know this story, but could you let us know, what was the hardest day that you had as a U.S. Marine, and what did that teach you about life?
Wow, we really are just getting right into it. Okay. Here's what I would say about the Marines. I mean, a lot of the time with the Marines, the messaging itself is choosing a certain type of a person. So it's not like you're blindsided about what you're getting into. You just never know until you've started to experience certain things. I guess if you're going to go for the defining moment, it was the day that I got sent to the beach, and that was definitely not a beach that you wanted to be on, right? Like one of 5 of my drill instructors, Staff Sergeant Morris actually was the guy that welcomed me with this. And when you're doing side straddle hops until you can't move, and when you're doing push-ups until your arms can't move or are shaking, and they're making you blow into the sand, create Lake Erie. That's what all I heard was my last name being yelled over and over again. Create Lake Erie, blow in it, get sweat or get everything all over your face so you can't see. You're in extreme pain. But here's the crazy thing. What I didn't realize before all that had happened is I just came out of the gas chamber. Okay. Well, in the gas chamber, you have no idea. So what you think is you're going to go into this gas chamber, you're going to take off your gas mask, and you're going to tell them your name and your social security number. What we didn't realize is there's going to be about 30 people in that gas chamber, and they're going to go through everybody's name and everybody's social security number. And by the time they're getting to like the 15th person, you can't see. It feels like your eyes are coming out of your head. Snot is not actually breaking off of your body. So it's from your nose about 4 feet down, still hasn't broken and hasn't touched the ground yet. So you truly believe from the bottom of your heart, like, maybe I'm actually going to die. Now, the mindset behind it, though, is that people have gone through this before. So you do have some kind of a conscious mind that says not everybody, they actually made it out of this. So that was the toughest day. Was I leave the gas chamber, get called right to the beach after my near-death experience, and then he's going to put me through hell. Now, the thing the gift that he gave me, though, was he actually knew what he was doing. And he basically told me, this is probably going to be one of the most toughest, challenging days of your life. And the world's not fair. And you're going to be faced with all kinds of things moving forward. But when you get faced with that, you're going to be able to come back to this day and say, holy smokes, man, very rarely will you ever have to encounter something like this ever again, right? So the toughest day of my life potentially became the best day of my life to help me through other things in life.
That's amazing. And I can see that come to fruition, which we'll get into. But how long was that day of torture? How many hours?
Honestly, from a time perspective, probably not nearly as long as what I can make up in my head, right? Like from the time that you're getting prepared to go to the gas chamber to the time being in it, then coming out and basically feeling like you just screwed up everything in your life and being on the beach, it might not have been more than 30 minutes.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
And it feels like it was 23 hours, but it might not have been more total 30 minutes or an hour from start to finish.
What was going on in your head? When I see and hear that, because I read your book too, it's called In the Trenches, right? And so you detail that out. And when I read that, I think of, man, this guy's like invincible. This guy's Superman. And And what was going on inside of your head if, the point of this is the fake events appearing real and doing hard shit, even though you're scared or you don't have the courage, you do it anyway. So what was that like internally?
That you're not doing it alone. Right? You are surrounded by other people. So again, it's just getting yourself into that space to say other people have gone through this before and survived. Therefore, the mindset is you're in this type of training. It is designed to prepare you for wartime. That's what it's designed for. So just knowing and understanding that you're not doing it alone, no one succeeds alone. That was helpful. That even though you don't know the time frame behind it, it will all come to an end. At some point, it's going to come to an end. But being able to say, "Oh yeah, you feel invincible, and it's not. This is going to be simple and easy." Hell no, man! Internally, you're terrified, right? But at some point, it's no different in life. Like when you know what you're set out to accomplish, right? Like you face those things because whatever you're going after demands it. Most of the people in my life that have accomplished really amazing things have had massively hard challenges, and that's what makes them who they are. I don't know anybody that has succeeded their way all the way to success, and I don't know anybody that did it on the easy path.
Yeah.
So, you're just going to do it anyway, man.
How long were you part of the Marines, and then what was next for you?
So when I entered the Marines, I actually came in in the reserves. So I did my 4 years in the reserves, and I transitioned out into technically what we would call the business world from there. Right. And again, transitioning out of the Marines into the business world prepares you for quite a few things.
Yeah.
So where other people are thinking it's really difficult, it's kind of laughable in the things that you can see. There's nothing.
Yeah. Did you get right into real estate, or how long was it from there to real estate?
Oh no, I didn't get into real estate until 2004. So it was 7 or 8 year transition before I got into real estate. But the piece of real estate for me was I was third generation real estate agent. Well, I still am third generation real estate agent, both sides of my family. And the thing I knew without a doubt was I was never going to be in real estate.
What made you get in? What made you get in it then?
I got into real estate as a path to internally recognizing at a younger age that I was about 27, 28 when this experience had transitioned, and I'd hit the ground running in my previous career pretty quickly. But if we're not going to go through that whole story, it's like, hey, you fast forward, and I kind of got as far as I could go. There was no further past that. That was kind of a scary moment, honestly, because you get to a point where maybe it's everything that you've asked for, or you follow this path and you've gotten to a place, and then you turn around and you're like, wait a minute, where do I go from here? And that was a terrifying day, actually. That was a terrifying day because I basically came home, broke down to my newer bride at the time and said, this company's kind of offered everything that I could ever ask for, and I'm going to turn it down. Because by me saying yes, I don't know, I just feel like I won't have anywhere else to go. So I come home and I break down and I let Nicole, my bride, know this. But the crazy question is what are you going to do next? I didn't know. I truly didn't know. I could tell you the day, but when I was at my previous career, when I was looking in the mirror and I was on the phone with Nicole, and I basically said, oh my gosh, I figured it out. Everything that I've been fighting, everything that I was resisting, if I just show up the same way, care at the same level that I care for the clients that I'm currently working with, and I do that in an industry that has unlimited potential, now's the time.
Where were you living at the time?
So I was living in Fresno, California at the time that decision was made. And when we made the decision, though, because we're going to kind of skip steps here, I actually went out to Boise, Idaho in my previous career for 1 year. When we relocated to Boise, Idaho, I didn't have my real estate license. I had half of it that was kind of done, and I needed to do the other half. So it took about 2 months before my license arrived. And in that process, that's when I was doing half days. Like I was on the phone from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on a mission to find people selling Boise, Idaho in general. Like it was a hidden gem. Oh my gosh, this place is awesome. And now I need to get on the phone and start making things happen because I didn't have a plan B and it was go time. So by the time, like the first day that my real estate license arrived, I wrote my first offer, screwed it up every which way from Sunday. And at least though, I sent my offer to the owner of the real estate school that happened to have the listing. So he kind of laughed at it, walked me through it, gave me the gift of like, hey, you're a new agent. I'll help you through this process. But my first offer that was written and accepted was a 45-day close. And by the time that property closed, I already had 9 properties under contract. So I was moving right out of the gate. I didn't necessarily know what I was doing or why I was doing it. I was just on a mission, right? Like one of the key pieces here is that I had met with a broker at a group 1 before I started. And he asked me what I was looking to accomplish or like what my goal was. And now, mind you, at that point in Boise, Idaho, back in 2003, 2004, properties were substantially less than they are today. So we laugh about it to this day in the context of, I said, well, my goal is to sell $10 million in real estate in my first year, my first 365 days. And he was like, how the hell are you going to do that?
That's encouraging.
Yeah. I mean, he looked me right in my eyes and he's like, he was waiting for this plan or waiting for this, like, where'd you come up with that? And I looked him right in his eyes and I said, Ron, I have no idea, but I promise you it will not take me long to figure it out. And he laughs at me because he knows, like, I sold 47 houses and $9.8 million in real estate in my first 365 days. So I didn't hit it.
Who was your client? So you had 9 deals under contract in 45 days. You didn't know anyone. When I'm leading an office and leading a team, the biggest excuse I get is, I'm too young. I don't know anyone. Who do I call? It doesn't matter. You had no plan B. So what were you doing? Who was your client?
Well, it's not, I love the fact that somebody says, hey, you're too young, because even though I wasn't like 18 years old, I didn't look very old at all. And so I needed to find that confidence. And I just believed in myself that if I focus on the client and care enough and do the right thing, right, ask enough questions and figure out what matters most to them, that would help. But my actual conversation when people would ask was very simple. How long have you been doing this? I'm like, feels like my entire life. I'm third generation, both sides of my family. And then I'd go right into, tell me how I could help you. That's what overcame that. But as far as like who my clientele was, I picked out my Rolodex, figured out who owned, who were already business owners already, who would want to invest in a hidden gem like this. And I started with the people that were back in California that potentially would want to invest. That's kind of what broke me into the real estate market. Is my mission was, I'm looking for somebody to get on an airplane every single week, show up in Boise on Friday and have a property under contract by Sunday. That was literally my only focus.
Yeah, I imagine the properties in Boise was like 1/8 of what they were used to, or just the what you can get for your money was probably so compelling to them. Do any of those clients still have the property, the ones that you sold them?
Mm-hmm.
So you're probably up there on their favorite people list.
I don't know about that. But no, I mean, look, here's the key, man. I just had to learn in action. I didn't have time. I didn't have time to sit around and go to a classroom and learn everything. I had to get into action and learn in action. And like, that's the whole key though. When you start figuring out purchase and sale agreements, well, they start to make more sense as you actually write real contracts.
Yeah.
Right. And when you start writing them fast, you kind of get pretty good at it.
So 47 homes in your first year?
Yes.
And then, so how long were you selling real estate in Boise?
11.
11 years?
As far as me actually selling a house 11, 12 years, yeah.
What did that grow to? How big did you build a team? What did that look like?
Oh, I mean, look, you really want to go through that long story? I mean, that's awesome because I thought it was really awesome and I got places really fast. And then guess what happened? The market collapsed. I lost everything, lost it all.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Right? So, I mean, look, it's one thing to say yippee-ki-yay, you were pulling something off that maybe they hadn't seen at that time. But here's the gift though. The gift of a lot of that is building a real estate team or actually a sales team. That didn't really exist in 2004. So I didn't have the noise of everybody else that may have been doing it wrong. But on the flip side, I didn't actually know how to do it right. I was just on a mission to make stuff happen. And yeah, so, going through that process, as far as my first person that came aboard was Nicole. She came aboard like three months after I had started because I was so busy. And she was trying to figure out, what on earth are you doing? And again, when you're working from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. nonstop and she has no idea like where she's at, she came in to help. Got my first assistant that wasn't Nicole 10 months after I started. Honestly, that was hell because I didn't want to slow down. And the greatest gift with that was all these job descriptions and things of that nature. What I knew was I needed someone with administrative help, right? That's what I knew. So it made logical sense for me to just ask people that I knew who they knew that was an expert at administrative assistance. And somebody comes, let me know, hey, my niece just graduated from the University of Nebraska. She has a degree in administrative organization. And I'm like, perfect. Met with her, great, hired her. I mean, if you have a background in it and that's what you have your degree in, it seemed to me like it's a match. And it was. She was amazing. And accelerated growth happened because we lived in the same office. Side by side, she listened to every conversation, everything that I did. I think that's a big challenge for a lot of people is they try to do things remotely. They try to do things separately. But if you want to accelerate growth, start listening to every conversation. And that'll accelerate really fast. So basically, I mean, people were coming up to me in the office. They were asking for help. Newer people were like, hey, man, how have you done it? And they would say, hey, any advice you could give? They'd bring me contracts. They'd bring me things like, what do you think? And honestly, it just all grew organically. I got to a place where I had so much business that I would actually ask them, do you want to give it a shot? I got a client here that needs help. And I kind of like auditioned, right? Auditioned probably my first 3 agents that they would take business. They would do really great at it. So it wasn't a sit in a room and sell each other on how great we are and why we're going to do this together. It was more of an organic growth of, I actually need help. I have an overflow of business and you guys keep coming up and you're motivated and you want to learn it. Why don't we see how you do?
Yeah, it's the show me mentality that is missing. And so that's what you coach us on too, is show me something first. Let's do this before we make it official. And, you can sit in an interview and say anything you want to anyone. And then it's like time to actually work. It's like, oh no, I don't like making phone calls. It's like, well, we hired you to make phone calls. So that concept is a no brainer, but it doesn't really exist, unfortunately, unless you have a coach that tells you their experiences. So you mentioned that this success you're having went to your head a little bit, and then the worst time in, our lifetime for real estate happened. So what happened during this time that, you built up a big team, you built up a big business? What was next?
Well, what was next was it all came crashing down. That was what's next, right? So I got to a point where I felt like, oh my gosh, I probably did a lot of this correctly. And then, market collapses, things catch up to you, secondary market goes away. I got 27 properties pending on the board. Secondary market collapses and 23 of the 27 pending go away in a phone call. So things kind of happen significantly fast, right? And then it's where you're going to go from here, man. Kind of the same thing. I didn't have a plan B. So, yeah, it was fun times, man.
Did you have your expenses, like, did your lifestyle creep up with your income, or like what was?
Everything did. It's one thing to say, hey, something falls out of escrow or something, but when a secondary market collapses and there is no saving it, so you got to get into go mode again pretty fast. And I became a coach specifically because of this. I became a coach because of the hell that I went through. I own this, by the way. Nobody did this. You fly too fast, you fly too close to the sun, and eventually you will get burned. And the mistakes that I had learned is when I went across different than the path that I had started and started bringing people on to bring them on versus putting them into action first. It didn't work. It just didn't work. And so I had to get really lean, really fast, figure out which way is up or down. And I would love to tell you that was all solved in a 3-minute period of time, but it was more like a 3-year period of time, figuring everything out, figuring out your priorities, losing. I mean, a really fun day when you're supposed to be in the industry itself and looked at like somebody that's done a pretty good job, and you're the one short selling all of your houses. Those are fun times, right? Like, and no, they weren't really fun. But yeah, a process was, we'd have to go timeline specific, but like we got to a place where I made a call to one of my clients borrowing money to pay for Christmas gifts for my kids, going to Walmart and buying like a $13 cubic zirconium ring for my bride, letting her know I'll never be in this position again. Yeah, it was tough, man. It was tough.
So it was the high of the high and then the low of the low, like basically snap of the fingers, building your way out, clawing your way out. How did you get out of that then eventually?
Over a 3-year period of time, there's just so much, right? Like you're just grinding. You're just finding a way. And, first of all, you gotta accept reality. So accept reality, figure out what matters most. But I need to head over. Literally, it's one thing to say I'm going to borrow money from a client. It's another than that. We got to a point where you're short selling investment properties, okay, but then you short selling your house. Now you're about to lose your house. So from that to moving my family out of our primary residence that just got sold to a client's property that was an investment, right? And doing that for a month or two before finding another client so I can move from there to there. Again, like you find a way, man. You find a way. But I didn't, the pride element, not necessarily asking for help fast enough, things like that. That's what gets you there. Right? Like helping people make decisions that are super painful, getting ahead of it and being proactive. Those are the things I see now, but wasn't able to see then. But yeah, you want to talk about facing fear. That's huge, right? Like we got to a place where we basically needed to just make a public manifesto. Like just tell me I'm going to own all these mistakes. I'm not hiding behind them. So I'm just going to write a public manifesto that basically says, here's how I screwed everything up. Because that's one of the ways that relieved me of that fear. I'm like, just own it. Yeah, but it's a grind, man. Again, it's not like, hey, this happens and 30 days later, everything's fine. This was, now what? This is at a time where people didn't actually understand what short sales were. So you were, again, relearning all in action, getting on the phone and facing it. I'm just going to call the banks and let them know where I stand. Here's the thing. I got so good at short sales because I was doing my own damn property that then I could go help other people.
Getting out of fear for you is action.
It's action, right? You sit in that thing long enough and all it does is just expand and get bigger. So you just got to execute, man. You got to execute. And, you want to learn. You learn by executing and then reflecting on what you executed. But, there's too many people out there that read all kinds of books that don't execute on shit, right? But like you really want to learn, just go execute more.
And this time of your life is what led you to being a coach and wanting to be a coach. Is that what I heard?
Not even close. It was really like, it was just all of that. Like what you heard me say was, I know why I became a coach. You asked me clear and simple, what I'm like, well, I felt I was already doing it. I felt like that's what I was called to do. I was coaching people long before I started doing it professionally. But why did I actually join an organization to do it professionally? Well, that's simple. Because I wish I had the person I am now coaching me through the times that I was during that, because it was so painful that I don't want anybody to ever have to go through that.
Yeah, that's powerful. And I can feel that. I never knew this story. I mean, I heard a little bit of it, bits and pieces, but I never knew the story and the why. And so how long have you been coaching, and do you track your hours or clients? I know we say 10,000 hours is a master. That's when you become, you get into mastery, but you're at, in my opinion, and from what I see, you are an executive coach that coaches other coaches. You also have realtors that you coach, and so you're at the kind of the peak of that. How long did that take you, and what has that journey been like?
Well, it's not been easy, right? Like, I mean, it's time on task, right? So it's like, how many sessions have you done? 15 to 17,000. When you do time on task and you have that many sessions, the game starts to slow down. You're able to see it differently. A decade ago, I would want to teach you the entire MREA, Millionaire Real Estate Agent, on one call in 30 minutes. Now I may spend 3 weeks on one sentence in the MREA, because I know this is about simplicity and understanding. It's about focusing on the person, not the problem, and figuring out like the root cause of what's going on. You just can't read that. You have to execute. It's the same thing. Hey, I read all the books on being a coach. I'm like, I love it. You haven't coached a freaking person. Nice try. Go out and do it. Go out and make mistakes. Go out and say the wrong thing. Go out and give the wrong advice. Go out and talk too much without listening. You're a good coach because you got your ass beat. That's why you're a good coach, right? I actually did have hair, believe it or not. I don't have hair anymore, and that's all earned. At least I'm high speed, low drag now. But those are all lessons learned, right? Like, and there's just too many people out there that want to get to a place where somebody else is without actually going through the process. And there's just no shortcut to it. There's not.
Theory versus reality, or theory versus the life experiences and the action. And that's like a broken record. It's the action piece, it's the simplicity piece with you. So that is, I mean, every call, because we like to make things very complicated, because if we make it complicated, we don't do it, well, then it makes sense to us. But if we realize how simple it is and then we don't do it, well, that's hard to swallow as a realtor.
It's understanding that, though, right? Like, there's ability to, like, Tony DeSello taught me this a long time ago. You show up to listen, and the greatest coaches get to level 3 listening. And level 3 listening is actually hearing what is not being said. Level 2, you're hearing what's being said, repeating it back to them, getting it on the same page. But when you get really great, you can hear everything that they're not telling you.
Yeah, it's hard to BS. It's hard to not get the truth pulled out. So that is awesome to have. And I hear you say that you also have coaches that continue to help you out, because you're, the law of your lid, you can only help people to where you grow to, right? So it's not like you got to the level of like, oh, I don't need a coach anymore. Correct?
Well, we all have blind spots. That's the key. You have blind spots, and you need people to, number one, you want encouragement, but you also want them to be able to shine the light on what you can't see so that you can make improvements. Right? I mean, let's be real. You want to know my greatest coaches? My clients. My clients are my greatest coaches, right? Why? Because they're certified killers. That's why. And it's who I am. So I have to get ahead of you guys, right? You put great people in your world. You surround yourself with great people, and it forces you to rise up. I mean, you got no other choice. You rise up or you're going to get slaughtered. So some of my greatest teachers are my clients.
Yeah, for sure. You came up with the concept. I don't know if it was intentional or how it came about, but it's more of an experiential coaching. And I think it was September of 21. you started the call and said, "Hey, I'm going to do the Disney Marathon in January." And I was like, "Hey, good for you. That's awesome." And then you're like, "Well, you are too." And I'm like, "Nah, good luck. Yeah, no way." And the whole call was 30 minutes of objections around why I'm not going to do the marathon. And you handle them all. And by the end of it, I said, "Oh, okay, I'll do it." And I just remember being like, "Well, I'm only running a mile or two at a time. That's 3 months away." And you said, "Well, here's a 3-month training program from start to finish." Whatever it was, where did this experiential coaching, because now that piece of it has been the piece that has changed me the most and the people part of this group the most. Where did you come up with that?
Reflection. I mean, that's really kind of what it boiled down to. It's like, look, when you reflect and you realize from either like the Marine Corps side of it or facing like some really challenging times in your life, some people that make these New Year's resolutions and they want to go to the gym and they want to create these habits and that can work for them. But for me, I just looked at it, I'm like, well, maybe if you just do 2 really big, hard things in a year that you would have to train to accomplish, it would take care of kind of like your health and the hard pieces, right? Kind of the simple equation. Oh, I see this agenda. I got to do all this stuff. I'm like, or you could just do 2 events and it will force you to actually execute. So really it's figuring that out. And then I need accountability. The highest level of accountability is invite people to do it with me so that you have a greater impact. You crossing the finish line is awesome. Don't get me wrong. You watching other people come with you to cross that finish line that they maybe never would have done it at all is the most gratifying thing on the planet. It's kind of how it started, right? Like me and a group of coaches had done it a couple years before I had invited anyone else. And it was kind of the same thing. Hey, we realized from that experience that the days that you didn't want to run, the days that you were laying in bed and you're like, screw it. Or you maybe would have let yourself off the hook. You look down and somebody sent a text message, just finished 5 miles, just did X. It gives you the confidence and the motivation, like, let's go. So it's kind of the same thing. It's like, hey, we just did it. We executed on it. Made the decision at Coaching Skills Camp back in like 2019 that we're going to do something like this. And instead of like delaying or whatever, it was like made the decision, oh crap, need to find some people to come with me to make sure I don't get let off the hook. Found a couple of coaches right then and there to say yes. One of the coaches was like, well, that's a huge commitment. I'd have to call my bride. I'm like, good, call her right now. Let's make this decision. Because I needed people to go. I needed a reason not to get let off the hook. So I like literally said, yep, I'm going to do it. Booked it right then and there. Found the people that were going. Developed a text app to keep us on track. And that's how it started, man.
Yeah, I remember days because it's January. It's Florida. You're from Texas. You don't think about cold weather. So I'm training through a marathon in 0-degree weather. And there was one day in particular. I think it was the 20-mile run. And I'm like, how can I put my watch on my kids and just have them run around the house a lot? Like, how can I get out of this? Because we shared our workouts, and the fact that I had to share my workout got me to go do that workout. So and it's the consistency that does it. So now you've done, I think, 3 marathons, right? I've done 2 of them with you. We did the half Ironman, which still scares me to think about. But we finished it, and we got to see, who says yes and then who actually does it, who actually shows up. Because it's one thing to commit. It's another thing to then go through all the work and all the excuses and actually cross the finish line.
Well, that's just life though, man. Like you can have reasons or results, or you could just find one reason to win, one reason to do it, find a bigger purpose behind it. That doesn't make it easy, my friend. It doesn't. It's understanding it based on reflection. I mean, you would know now. I mean, we ran Chicago together. It was cold. I had never experienced cold before. The first one I did was in Phoenix. I was going to die. The second one that I did was in Disney. But dude, I thought the last 6 miles, I literally could have boiled eggs on the top of my head, man, or cooked an egg on the top of my head. It was crazy how hot it was. And then when I did New York, I'm like, oh, great, at least it'll be cold. Nope, that was the one weekend that it was still 78 degrees, and the temperature didn't drop until a week later. So that was really hot, and it didn't even start till 11 o'clock in the morning, right, instead of like 7 a.m. So the Chicago one hits, and it's really cold, and I'm like, yes, it is so much easier for me to run the cold than the heat.
That's funny. We had the Ironman group, we had 5 of us that finished. We had a text thread that went, and you're doing swimming, you're doing biking and running, and the swim was in the ocean, swimming through jellyfish, swimming through waves that made you go backwards as you're trying to go forwards. I mean, there's all sorts of that to me was the hardest part. And at the core of that group, and you mentioned just like your clients and the killers, the people that you coach, was Sarah Rocco. And she was a top agent here. She had, everything going, 39 years old, 3 kids. And the person that I see as really knowing where her life is headed, just like living with a purpose, unfortunately was hit head on and in a car in December. And so now she's no longer with us. What lessons have you reflected on with that? And, I'd say you probably knew her more than almost anyone just because of your hours and hours and hours that you spent with her. So how has that changed things or reflected on, your coaching and life?
Look, I don't know that it's changed on how I coach. What Rocco did was prove that she was living it. Okay. Was that easy for any of us to take or know when the news came in? No. And were those some of my most challenging days? Yes. But like anything else, it's like at some point, if you don't, you got to focus on gratitude, man. You got to get back recentered, and you got to figure out hey, this person, if we go back and look, all of the focus that she had, all of the intentionality she had, that was a game changer. What she did and the experiences that she created for the people around her, herself, and her kids over the last few years, arguably were more than a lot of people would do in a lifetime. And so it's just understanding some of those things that help me get my head back in the game of life is so precious that you better take advantage of it. You better figure out what your priorities are. You need to let the dumbass shit that usually drags you down go, right? And just truly reflect on what matters most and stay in that lane. Because we just don't know, man. Just don't know.
Yeah, one thing that stands out to me is last year she had 2 trips to Europe with her kids, and they're almost graduated. It could be easy to say once they're graduated, then I'll go, or I'll go next year. This is crazy. This is busy, but it just happened. And with what I see with you, and I don't know if you were thinking about this, but these marathons and these Ironmans and everything you're doing, your kids and your bride have come along for the ride. And what has that been like, having your kids and your bride be your biggest cheerleaders and also getting into it with you?
Indescribable, man. Right? The time where you don't want to same thing, knowing that you have something to look forward to, knowing that you're getting a message while you're running this that, hey, we're going to be around the corner cheering you on. Just for me personally, how I'm wired, there's no way I'm going to let them down. Right? As a dad, as a spouse, I'm just trying to show them, lead the way, show them the path. Stuff is going to get hard. And I have all the other excuses too. Hey, I'm getting older now and my knees suck and I've done all these other things with sports and this, one or the other. So running is hard, and I'm like, but find a reason to do it, man. And the fact that like my kids have jumped in now, my daughter just completed the Chicago Marathon. Not only did she complete it, right? She was diagnosed with celiac. She ate the wrong things the day before, so she wasn't nutritioned right. She wasn't able to eat in the morning. All the odds were stacked against her. She was the youngest person to complete it and run it, and she still completed it. Was like, that's why I do it, man.
That's super cool. And my kids are younger, so I always thought when they get to your age, the kids get to that teenage age, they're just going to hate their parents. But seeing your kids, are they 18 and 20, 18 and 21, or how old are they? 18 and 21. And you guys are like best friends. It's really encouraging. It shows what it can be. And so that was really cool. I think that's probably the coolest part of all of it, was just seeing that family dynamic with both you and with Sarah, and how the kids were along for the ride and cheering that on. So,
and Zach was my hero, man. Zach was my hero that day because it was really hot. And I remember, man, I had like 4 miles left and I had nothing left in the tank. Right. And Zach knew it. Now, I wasn't in jeopardy of not completing it, but man, I had nothing left. And instead of him giving me a high five, he just jumps out and starts jogging along with me. He's got stuff in his shorts. He's doing it with hey dudes. And he stayed with me the whole time. Those whole 4 miles, he stayed and encouraged. And you got this, Dad. And it was priceless. Almost got me disqualified because he was about to cross the finish line with me. They were having to tell him, he's going to get disqualified if you do that.
Yeah, and right after, at the end, you're in they pull out the wheelchair and.
Oh yeah.
But I want to talk to you all day. There's about 5 other things I want to ask you, but for the sake of time, we have a group called the Modern Men, and there are 25 of us. You were one of the main creators of the group. And as a last question here, what caused you guys to come up with this idea, and what has been, what has the benefit of Modern Men in that concept?
Yeah, that was, I know that Josh had been talking, I think, to Freed, right? Like that's how it kind of all, Jordan Freed, and that's how it kind of the conversation had started about forming something. And Jordan had reached out to me and he was like, what are your thoughts? Like, what do you think? And I'm like, I think it's a great idea. But again, like a lot of us, hey, we got great ideas and then what? And what I didn't realize though is I sent the message out about, here's what we're going to do. You want to be a part of it. Unlike an Ironman or unlike a marathon, they turned around and they were like, all yeses. So what I learned quickly was how bad it was needed. That if you look at that time frame, from COVID hitting and things of that nature, that we had experienced a lot, and we don't know as men sometimes, right? Like sometimes you feel it like we feel like we have to be Superman or Superman. And I think COVID and isolation and lack of energy and other things that were coming across the pipe were really taking a toll on us, and we didn't really know it. And it took let's get a tribe of men potentially going through the same thing where you can kind of be vulnerable, or you could we can kind of share what's actually going on in our own experiences to help each other work through it. Right? It's kind of how it formed, really. I mean, I guess if we rewind, we did the 3 of 7, which was really fascinating, with Chad Wright. And then that kind of transitioned into, well, that was like crazy hardcore. And maybe we want something not as hardcore. Not because we're not, it's creating something experiential, that doesn't have that level of high intensity. Kind of how it came to fruition.
Yeah, and loneliness is basically the number one killer of men, because women are good at that. They're good at having friends and being vulnerable. Men aren't. And so we have a group of top performing agents and coaches get together, we be vulnerable. And the one thing that I appreciate is all the activities we do you have to be present for. You can't be, we learned fly fishing, we did ATVing, we did race car driving with BMWs, like all these things. You can't be on your phone. You have to be present in the moment, and then you're learning what that feels like, and then you're reflecting on it. So we're coming up to Costa Rica here in less than a month, I think, and I can't wait to see what's planned. I heard whitewater rafting, but we'll see what else is in store. And those are the trips each year that really keep me going, reset me, rewire me, and make me a better leader and father. So without all of that, the runs, the modern men, the crazy stuff, the get into action, make it simple, all those things is all the life lessons that have carried me on and helping me move forward. So it's making a big ripple effect, and I can't thank you enough. I did have like probably 4 or 5 more questions, so maybe we'll do a part 2 one day. But thank you so much for just the sake of time and for everything else. We will wrap up. But do you have any final words or anything that you wish I would have asked?
Oh yeah. Well, I wish I knew the other questions that you were going to ask me that you didn't. How about that?
Well, I know you had a great story about moving to Hawaii. You have a great story getting more into the 3 of 7 backpacking trip. That was kind of like my hell day, or hell 3 days of your version of the Marines, and then just stories around your father and everything else. So there's so much that you've accomplished and you've done that, and that's why I wanted to get right into it, because I knew we had so much to talk about. But everything that you shared, thank you so much. This episode will help a lot of people because you've helped a lot of people, and no one really says, "Hey, Craig, what's your why? Why are you doing what you do?" So I really appreciated this on the flip side.
Love it, man. Thanks for having me. And yeah, I would love to continue the other questions, because I promise you all of those things, right? Like life has adversity. That's never going to change, right? It's like, but you got to understand what you are preparing for. And if you prepare for certain elements, it does make things easier, right? It's like, you got to front load the pain to have long-term profit. And the more you get your head wrapped around that you can't do things alone. Like, nobody succeeds alone. Front load pain for long-term profit. And we talk about a life by design that most people just don't live it. And almost everything that we talk about today is like executing through it and having people around you that believe in you. And if you don't know why you're doing something, then my suggestion is figure out why you're doing it, because it does that why sometimes is hard, and it actually does make things easier, right? We face our fear because our goals demand it. And just got to have a few seconds of insane courage and go take on the world, baby.
Thank you so much. We'll see you soon. Take care.
All right, man. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening. I really hope you enjoyed the episode. I found it to be very value-packed. And like I had mentioned, there's so many more questions I wanted to dive into, so many more learning lessons. Really, to sum it up, it's take action. Take action. That will kill the fear, and great things will happen. So if you love this, please share it with everyone you know, like, subscribe, and we'll see you at the next one.